Connor Gillispie was great, but it wasn't enough as the bullpen falls apart later in the game and the Marlins drop the series to the Mets.
You are Locked On Marlins, your daily podcast on the Miami Marlins.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into Locked On Marlins. I'm your host, Jeremiah Geiger. Go hit me up on X at Jeremiah Geiger2. And thank you for making Locked On Marlins your first listen of the day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, which is your team every day. Go hit the subscribe button on YouTube so you don't miss any episodes in the future. And on today's show, I'm going to be talking about Connor Gillespie's really impressive outing, talk about the bullpen running out of gas later in the game, and then look ahead to the future. First and third base really been a struggle so far for the Marlins early on this year, and this season is a season of change and development. So we're going to talk about the future of this team moving forward. And on today's podcast, I am joined by Ryan Schlesinger over on X at Marlins. Ryan, how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing good. I'm excited to be here. Very excited with how the Marlins are playing and how their season has started. They're only one game above 500 as of now, but they've looked really good. A lot of surprises from individual players like Kyle Stowers, like Otto Lopez, and they're doing all this while being without Agustin Ramirez, without Connor Norby, and without a few other pieces in the pitching rotation and the bullpen. So it's been a really intriguing start. Even if they're not really going anywhere this year, they could still maybe string together 70 to 75 wins. And even if they don't do that, just if we keep seeing individual players perform like this, it's a really encouraging sign for the future.
Absolutely. And one of those players that really impressed tonight was Connor Gillespie. Comes over a DFA, and the Marlins get him really for nothing. I didn't know much about him in the offseason and had a really solid spring. And he faces a lineup with the New York Mets that consists of guys like Juan Soto, Peter Alonso, Francisco Lindor, and he did really well. Five innings, gave up 1 run, only gave up 4 hits, didn't walk anyone, so the command was really good, and then had 6 strikeouts, and a few of those were in really high leverage situations with runners in scoring position. So Gillespie's jump from his first start against the Pirates to his second start is really encouraging, especially with the command. And with the Marlins pitching staff, that's important because we've seen how this pitching staff is constructed. Guys are only going to be going 5 innings, and if you run into trouble, you don't want to get yourself out of the ball game like Cal Quantrill the other night. So Gillespie, I'm hoping he can continue this moving forward. What were your thoughts on him tonight, and what were your thoughts on this series and the pitching staff in general?
Yeah, you mentioned Connor Gillespie's command, and you cannot be more spot on with that. Connor Gillespie had nothing short of elite command tonight. He threw 73 pitches, and 51 of them were strikes. No walks, only 4 hits allowed on top of that, and 6 Ks. So it's really encouraging to see this against one of the better lineups in the National League. He had to deal with Pete Alonso, Francisco Lindor, and Juan Soto, one of the best 1-2-3s in all of Major League Baseball. And he did a very good job dealing with it. Some hard contact off him in the first inning with the Juan Soto single and Pete Alonso double, but he was able to work his way out of it, inducing 2 soft contact pop-outs against Brandon Nimmo and Jesse Winker. And he also got 6 strikeouts. He's not like a super high velocity guy, but he was still able to use his good stuff, use the off speed to get the strikeouts. So it's really encouraging. Definitely a huge step in the right direction from his first start against Pittsburgh, which wasn't even bad, but this one was just even better.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to a pitcher with lower velocity, like you said, the command, it starts and ends right there. You have to locate your pitches. You have to sequence well. And if you do, when you're throwing 92, 93, and you have a breaking ball that's working with his sweeper, and he'll throw that cutter, then you have somebody that can stick around. And it's only 1 start, but it's encouraging moving forward, given the state of the rotation right now, missing a key piece like Ryan Weathers, and Edward Cabrera is working his way back. Whether you think Cabrera should or shouldn't be in the rotation, once he's healthy, most likely he will be. So Connor Gillispie is trying to make a case not only to give his team, an opportunity to win the game and pitch well, of course, but he's trying to make a case to stick in the rotation for as long as possible. And this was a really good outing. I know you mentioned Sandy Alcantara before we started the show. Really briefly, before we touch on the bullpen, which ran out of gas, what are your thoughts surrounding Sandy's start to the season?
Yeah, overall, I'm still satisfied with how Sandy's pitched. A 3.72 ERA across 2 starts. And in his second start, even though he only went 5 innings and he threw, I believe, the least amount of pitches in a game he's thrown since 2021, he still looked very solid. And this was with him working on his fastball command. He went to his fastball a lot less than he did on opening day because he struggled with his command on Thursday against the Pirates. And he was able to figure it out with the off speed. And over 5 innings, only 3 hits allowed. Obviously, he gave up the 2 earned runs, but he was still able to get 4 Ks. And that's in an outing with, again, basically without use of the fastball. And when he was throwing the fastball, he was only throwing it at like 95 to 96 because he was trying to dial it down. And obviously, he's trying to work his stamina back up from Tommy John surgery. So I think just with all things considered that he hasn't pitched since 2023 and he has a sub-4 ERA to start off the season, and he's coming off a 5-inning outing where he only allowed 2 earned runs to, again, a decent Mets lineup. There's no reason to be disappointed with Sandy Alcantara right now. He's only going to progress in the right direction as the season moves on. And hopefully, as we know, it's inevitable that he'll get traded. Hopefully, he can just keep building his trade value so the Marlins could get one of the best prospect packages possible.
Yeah, we're going to talk about the future of this current Marlins team, how it's going to look like in a next segment, in the third segment. And I'm sure we're going to mention some hypothetical Sandy trade talk during that time. But I really wanted to mention the bullpen because the bullpen has been absolutely elite to start the season in terms of getting the outs when they needed to get the outs. They've kept this Marlins team in games to the point that they can get those 3 walk-off wins against the Pirates. They can win yesterday's game. And unfortunately, it ran out of gas tonight. The Marlins bullpen didn't have what it takes to get the dub. It was Calvin Fauché gives up a 3-run home run to Peter Alonso, and it was tied. You go into extras, and then an interesting pitcher, Xavier Curry, gets the 11th inning, and he just didn't have it tonight. I don't think it's an indictment on the Marlins bullpen because overall, I've really liked what I've seen. I've liked the outings I've seen from Lake Bacher, who's been really good. I like the ability of pitchers who can go multiple innings and provide that length, like Luarber Arias, Ronnie Enriquez, and even tonight, Tyler Phillips, who kept them in the game. How do you feel about the bullpen and that situation moving forward?
Yeah, the bullpen has been phenomenal to start the year. And you didn't even mention that they're doing all this without Andrew Nardi and now without Jesus Tinoco, who recently went on the injured list after, I believe, making 1 or 2 starts or 1 or 2 appearances in the Pittsburgh series. And we don't know how long he's going to be out for. I believe maybe about a month or 2 months. But that's besides the point. You mentioned Lake Bacher, who I've been really impressed with. Not the best outing on opening day, but he's followed that up with some really efficient outings. And today, another one, a hitless inning where he walked 1, struck out 1, and he is a master at getting weak ground balls for outs. He reminds me a little bit of what Richard Blyer was for us back in 2021 and 2022. So, yeah, I've been really high on Lake Bacher ever since we claimed him off waivers, I believe in late August or early September of last year. And then also Tyler Phillips going 2 innings. Obviously, he was claimed off waivers from the Phillies. So that's nice to see some long guys like Phillips, like Arias, like Henriquez, who can pitch multiple scoreless innings. And then I still trust the high leverage guys. We saw Anthony Bender get the save last night. And even though Fauché had a shaky outing, it was against the heart of the Mets order with Lindor, Soto, and Alonso. So overall, outside of Xavier Curry, who won't be up in the majors for long, he's kind of just an inning eater at this point. There's no one to be concerned about in the bullpen, at least among the guys who are permanent major leaguers.
And a really important thing to note is that today, or Thursday rather, this episode will be out Thursday. That's an off day. So the Marlins bullpen can get some much needed rest. And Anthony Bender, who you mentioned got a save just a couple games ago, I think he would have been in line for another save if Fauché had locked down the eighth. So right now it looks like with Tinoco out of the picture, being on the injured list, Calvin Fauché is the setup man. Anthony Bender is the potential closer, and maybe something changes. Maybe they play the matchup game like we saw with Anthony Veneziano in the ninth this series. But I would like to see Anthony Bender establish himself as the closing option moving forward. In the next segment, we're going to talk about first and third base for the Marlins. It's both positions have had a lot of trouble in terms of offensive production. We're going to talk about that and what we think has to change for those two positions moving forward right after this. Do you ever check your bank account and you wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money and you start building wealth. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. So, take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONMLB for half off your first year. If you're an everyday listener, I appreciate you, as always, being part of the Locked On Marlins crew. If this is your first time checking out Locked On Marlins, you can listen to it on Apple, Spotify, all the podcast platforms. And don't forget to leave a like and leave a comment on the YouTube channel and subscribe so you don't miss any episodes moving forward. I'm back here with Ryan Schlesinger. We're talking about first and third base for the Marlins. It's been a troubling couple series for these guys. Matt Mervis, Eric Wagaman, Jonah Bride. The only guy I'm going to say that's really been encouraging to a degree has been Graham Pauley. And that's just because in my mind, I've always liked him since he came over in the San Diego trade. Eric Wagaman, of course, hit that home run. He had a couple 2-hit days, but I'm just not that high on him right now as a potential building block and a player that should be getting everyday playing time moving forward. What is your take on first and third base and even the DH role?
Yeah, I feel like the issue with most of these guys, like you mentioned, is that they can all be solid players, but I don't see any of them having the ceiling of Kyle Stowers or Griffin Conine or even a Dane Myers. Their ceiling is like a league average hitter, and if you're a third baseman, first baseman / DH, that's supposed to be a power hitter, a better hitter than most other positions. That's just not going to cut it. And quite frankly, the only reason why guys like Matt Mervis and Eric Wagaman are even on the roster right now, one is because of the Connor Norby injury, obviously. And then another one would be that this lineup does not have a lot of power. And Peter Bendix is basically saying, I'm going to hit Matt Mervis cleanup because he'll do nothing besides hit homers, but we are so desperate for those home runs right now without Connor Norby and with Agustin Ramirez and Davison De Los Santos down in the minors working on some things. So that's the concerning thing. But yeah, I just don't see any of these current third baseman and first baseman part of the future outlook, maybe outside of Graham Pauley, who I also like. And Pauley doesn't really fit into the same category. I think he's a little more athletic than guys like Mervis and Matt Wagaman. And from what I've seen, just based on the eye test from a few games, he looks like a very competent defender at third base.
I think the issue with Mervis is the swing and miss. It's gone back to his times in Chicago, and it's carried on into Miami. Spring training, he was striking out a ton. He wasn't walking. And now we see early on through the first week of the season, Mervis isn't getting enough playing time to really get into a groove. I don't think the organization just views him. I mean, you mentioned it. He was brought in to provide that power, but when you're making contact with the ball at such a low clip, it's going to be hard to really translate into games and see that 20 home run power, 30 home run power. Wagaman was an interesting signing. I just, you think about Connor Norby coming back onto the active roster. Somebody's going to have to either get optioned or DFA'd. And to me, in my mind, it goes to Wagaman or Mervis. And you have to cut one of those experiments off right now, because I don't think you can justify just throwing Pauly down when, like you said, he's more athletic. And frankly, he's just produced way more than these guys. And you can see the ceiling for Pauly, I think, is more than Wagaman or Mervis. Jonah Brides had a really rough start to the season, but he's getting a ton of playing time. 23 at-bats, is hitting .087. He's only had 2 hits, no extra base hits. And a lot of people are going to start saying, oh, Bride sucks, get rid of him. I'm going to encourage people, you guys have to just take a step back. He had a really decent season last year. It's only been 1 week. So Bride, I'm willing to just give him enough time. You got to give him a couple months. But Mervis and Wagaman, especially with Wagaman, considering you signed him to a split contract, when Norby comes back, keep Pauly, and you got to make a decision between those two. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I completely agree. It's going to be between Wagaman and Mervis. I think Pauly is here to stay just because of how much higher his offensive floor is, and I believe he's like 23 or 24, so he is major league age. We saw him with the Padres for, I believe, multiple stints in the first half of 2024 before he was traded over to the Marlins in the Tanner Scott deal at the major league level. So, I have thought about optioning Javier Sanoa, but it seems like they just like him as a versatile utility guy. He's not going to provide much offensive output at the plate, and he's looked completely overmatched by major league pitching. But I think they are willing to maybe give him the experience against major league pitching to get better. And in the meantime, he can provide value by playing left field, playing the middle infields, etc.
The really concerning part I have regarding Sanoha is the strikeouts from somebody that doesn't strike out. Like that's not his game. He's going to put the ball in play, and now he's striking out plus, 40% of the time, 60, whatever the numbers, it's super high. And he's getting beat by fastballs. I mean, there was this one at bat today in which he swung and missed at 2 99-mile-an-hour fastballs, and then just watches 100 down the heart of the plate. Like you said, he's overmatched right now. A potential replacement, if they do decide, Sanoha needs more time in the minor leagues, would be Ronnie Simon, because Simon plays that utility role. He can play the outfield. He can play the middle infield in a pinch. And he's a veteran. He's been around. He hasn't made his major league debut, but he is older than, he has a lot of minor league experience. And not to say Sanoha is a failure or is going to bust overall as a prospect, but I do think he needs more tune-up in the minor leagues. And that's something that the Marlins organization has to consider because, again, it's only been 1 week. You do have time, but I think in the next couple weeks, if this continues to be a problem, then they're going to have to pull the trigger right there.
Yeah, I honestly forgot about Ronnie Simon a little bit. I don't personally know a ton about him, but just looking at the facts, he's 24, about to be 25. So he obviously has a ton of way less development left than Javier Sanoa, who's only 22. So
Right.
By default, I think if Sanoa keeps struggling, even though Sanoa has a higher ceiling, I think by default you should give Simon an opportunity to at least get a cup of coffee at the major league level.
In the next segment, we're going to talk about the future. Look ahead to the Marlins' future this season. What players do we think should be called up? Any potential trade rumors? Discuss all that. I think this season is a season of development, and a lot of these players you're going to see will be making their major league debuts, and it's important to track their development across all stages of the organization. Going to look ahead in the future right after this. Are you looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help keep you feeling fuller longer. If you love the no shells variety, it's the perfect grab and go snack for busy days. Whether you're snacking at your desk, on a road trip, or you just need a quick protein boost, they're always a go-to. And if you love cracking open every shell for that satisfying crunch, the in-shell options are a classic favorite. Wonderful Pistachios is a complete protein. It provides all 9 essential amino acids, and these little green wonders pack a protein punch. So, if you want that grab and go ease, grab the no shells Wonderful Pistachios. And if you like the satisfying crack of opening each shell like snack meditation, grab the in-shell variety. Whether you're running between meetings or dropping off the kids, Wonderful Pistachios are the snack that works as hard as you do. So get snacking and get cracking with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. If you have any questions for the mailbag episode, it is going to be every single Friday here on Locked On Marlins. You can submit a question on my Twitter at Jeremiah Geiger 2. Tag me, DM me, or leave your question or comment in the comment section on YouTube, and I'll answer it. I will shout you out, and you'll get recognized on the Friday mailbag episode. Our thoughts on the future of this team. You know, it's only been a week, Ryan, and there's a lot to be excited about. What are some things not currently in place with the Marlins organization that you're looking forward to see later on in the year?
I mean, are we talking like just players who aren't at the major league level, or like trade candidates?
Yeah,
or?
players, really anything that comes to mind surrounding this team.
Yeah. First of all, it would be the Sandy trade. I'm not looking forward to the day that Sandy is no longer a Miami Marlin, but at the same time, I know that the Marlins will probably get a top 10, top 15 prospect in all of baseball from either the Dodgers, the Red Sox, the Brewers, or the Tigers. Those are the 4 teams that I think will be in position to trade for Sandy at the deadline and have the prospect capital to trade for him. So I'm really excited to acquire our centerpiece of the farm system, our blue chip prospect, because even though Thomas White is elite, I wouldn't consider him a blue chip consensus top 30 prospect in all of baseball. So I'm excited for that to be added to our farm system at the trade deadline. I'm obviously excited to see Connor Norby make his season debut because I'm really excited about him. He had one of the best barrel rates in all of baseball in the second half of last year. So he has obviously a ton of potential, and I'm excited to see if he can improve defensively at third base. And then probably the prospect right now I'm most excited about is Augustin Ramirez. Hits the ball very hard. We saw that on display in spring training. I believe in AAA, he had 2 doubles the other night. And I'd like to see him improve defensively so that he can be our catcher of the future. And then lastly, just to add this real quickly, I'm excited about Joe Mack. Maybe he won't debut till 2026, but I am excited about his debut whenever that will be. Another just really encouraging catching prospect who had a big breakout year in the minors last year. So in general, I'm just excited to see if Mack can keep up those numbers in the minors this year, because we've only seen one season of him being an elite catcher at the AA level. So let's see it again. Let's see him at least make his AAA debut this year.
And he had a really good spring training. I mean, Joe Mack was one of the stars of the Grapefruit League for the Marlins. So I'm with you on all those things in terms of the prospects. With Sandy, I don't want to see him get traded right now. I think it will happen. I think it's inevitable if this team falls out of contention. And right now, you know, it's certainly expected by the national media that the Marlins will entertain Sandy Alcantara trade offers. The New York Mets were very open about trading for Sandy. The one team I would be very upset with, Peter Bendix and company, if they made a Sandy trade, would be to the Mets, because I don't think the Mets have the farm system that really intrigues me. I'm looking at some of their prospects. It's just not something that I would go, not to mention you're trading him in division. So for me, you did it with Jesus Luzardo, but don't do it with Sandy Alcantara. It's going to be interesting to read all the rumors and hear all the rumors surrounding him. And Agustin Ramirez, watch his development because he is a catcher and the Marlins are treating him as a catcher. He hasn't caught a lot. He's caught very little in terms of professional baseball and games played at the catching position. So I think they're going to give him every opportunity to stick behind the plate, which is why you're seeing him at AAA, because that bat is major league ready, Ryan. I mean, he, like you said, those 2 doubles, both over 100 miles an hour, and his swing is so easy. I mean, he sees the ball so well. He has such a good approach. He would immediately slide into the Marlins lineup and produce, I think. Max Acosta is another guy I'm excited because he's playing such a good shortstop, and his hit tool has improved. His power, he's already hit a home run so far. I want to see if that power can be consistent and be like a 10, 12, 15 home run guy. And maybe there's a scenario. The Marlins middle infield is kind of loaded right now, but maybe there's a scenario in which Max Acosta makes his major league debut for the Marlins at some point.
Yeah. In regards to Acosta, he's another guy that I forgot to mention, but I'm really excited about his development. That was a trade when we traded Jake Berger for him. I was really skeptical about that trade because some outlets like Pipeline and others didn't really have Acosta ranked super high. But ever since he's came to the Marlins organization, he's just shown only encouraging signs. Very good defender at short. He looks like a legitimate defensive shortstop. And that hit tool looks very solid. I feel like his ceiling is like a 110 to 120 OPS plus guy with a very, very good defense at short. And that could equal a 4 to 5 WAR player consistently at the major league level. And then to just touch on Agustin Ramirez once again, real quick, because you mentioned he has a major league hit tool. And I've discussed this with some people on Twitter. If you're mad about Agustin Ramirez being at the AAA level right now, that is just unnecessary, because the only thing that I'm taking away from him being down at AAA is that the Marlins want to ride him out as a catcher, and that's a good thing, because why would you want Agustin Ramirez to be stuck as a DH first baseman for his whole career when we know he's an athletic guy? It's not like he's some like unathletic guy. People have mentioned that maybe he could even try left field if catcher completely fails because of the logjam we have at first and DH and third base. But I just like that they're giving him an opportunity to play catcher, and hopefully we'll see it at the major league level soon. He could be at least splitting time behind the plate with Nick Fortes.
Yeah, and with Ramirez, like, catchers take a long time to develop. You very rarely see guys up at the major league level at 22, 23 years old. And I think Ramirez is 23, if I'm not mistaken. That's perfectly fine. There's no rush with him, and he's going to be up here at some point this season. It's just a matter of when, and it's a matter of if the Marlins feel comfortable about giving him the reins to calling games, and they feel good about his defense. This Marlins team right now is exciting. I think that's the word I have to describe it. They're 4-3. They've had a good homestand. Now you get an off day and you get to face a struggling Atlanta Braves team. Who knows what can happen there? Maybe you surprise, and maybe you pull a series win out against those guys. But if you're a Marlins fan and you're sitting here despondent, you shouldn't be, because there are players up here who really are turning heads. Griffin Conine, Otto Lopez, who has just been great. Kyle Stowers' development, his eye at the plate. These guys are fun and exciting to watch. And the last question, Ryan, before we get out of here, going back to the pitching staff, let's go with July. Who in the current rotation do you think will still be here, and who will not be here by this time in July?
Well, I'm hoping we at least ride out Sandy till the trade deadline when his value is at its peak and there will be the most teams asking for him, and they don't do what they did with the Rise. So I'm going to say that if we just go to late July, like right after the deadline, I'm going to say that our rotation is going to be Meyer. I'll say Gillispie sticks.
I like that.
Weathers is hopefully back, and hopefully by that time after the deadline, assuming there's no setbacks, Yuri Perez will be back in the rotation. And then, Garrett's out for the year with Tommy John, so you can rule that out. There's Belloso, and then some other guys I've thought about, maybe as a September call-up, Robbie Snelling, Adam Azor, maybe by even July or August. And that's basically about it. But that's still a good 7 to 9 rotation options right there. And I didn't even mention Cabrera, who I'm just so uncertain about his future that I'm not even going to say anything on the record, because we know he's super injury prone. He could get DFA'd. He could get traded. He could be in the rotation. He could be in the bullpen. There's like 5 different options for what can happen with Cabrera. So I'm not even going to say anything about that.
A lot of good options you just listed. I mean, like I said, guys, it is exciting to be a Marlins fan, and this season's just started. So be sure to continue watching or listening to Locked On Marlins. That's going to do it for today's episode. Ryan, thank you for coming on. You did an awesome job, man. It's great to talk to you.
Yeah, thank you.
And with that, guys, be sure to check out Locked On Fantasy Baseball Podcast next for your second listen of the day with the hosts Dominic Martino and Matthew Ane. And until next time, guys, stay safe, stay locked on, and let's go fish.